we're going to continue our conversation about softwares and servers at Nexttesting. We've already talked about servers and their environments, and this screencast is about the software development process. And in future screencasts, we'll talk about software unit and integration testing. And then in another screencast, we'll talk about the software deployment to servers. The software dev process, our public-facing software is a web application. We use it to upload the user test data. So whenever we go to events and test athletes, our data acquisition system prepares data for us that we upload to the website, and we use the web application for manipulating the data, for storing the data, and for reporting. It allows the athletes, the coaches, the administrators to do whatever they want with this web application. And that's what makes a web application very attractive to us, is our customers, the scouts, the coaches, the athletes, and we ourselves maintain the site because it's a web application. We use the site to manage athlete results and track their progress. We do vertical tracking, we do athletes compare with it. Our software runs on the Linux OS operating system. We use the Ruby on Rails application server framework, and we use the MySQL database. A typical programming machine would be would contain the Apache web server or the WebBrick web server, or a small web server that the programmer can use. Of course, the Rails application server and the MySQL database. So each programmer would have a programming environment that's made up of something similar to what we have in production. Again, each programming machine would have a Ruby interpreter, the Rails 3 framework, the Linux or a Mac OS. So our software, you can develop our software on a Linux machine or on a Mac OS machine, and I personally use both here at work and at home. Each programmer machine should have a MySQL database, and it does. We use the Ruby Version Manager, or RVM, to be able to try things out with different version of Ruby. So we're at version 1.87, and we're in the process of upgrading to 1.92 and then 1.93. Our favorite editor in here is the Vim editor, though we do use TextMate on the Mac every now and then. We use Pivotal Tracker to track the stories, the tasks that we need in conjunction with the marketing department and the stakeholders and the owners of the product. The programming process starts with Pivotal Tracker. So in conjunction with other people in the asset holder, the asset holders, the owner of the products and the marketing department, we sit down and we create tasks and stories about what needs to be done, and the programmer picks up the highest priority task, or a bug for that matter, and works on it. And when they're done with it, they commit it to the Git repository. The Git repository immediately triggers when that task has been committed to the master branch. It triggers the continuous integration server to run all the unit and integration tests that we have. This is a snapshot of our Pivotal Tracker stories for our web application. This is a snapshot of our Git client software and the branches we use. This is a local master branch, and it maps to the remote branch. We have a permanent sandbox branch that also maps to a remote origin sandbox branch, and we use the sandbox branch to keep the sandbox server. So when we deploy software to the sandbox server, it uses the sandbox branch and the origin sandbox. It uses the remote sandbox branch instead of master. The idea is the programmers can experiment, can test stuff without interfering with the master branch. The master branch is usually what we deploy from to all the other servers, such as the demo server, such as the staging server, the standby server, and production. So by having a permanent sandbox branch, we can isolate or sandbox, if you will, any programmer who's willing to do some testing. They can not only test it on their local machine, they can commit their work to the sandbox branch and then deploy it to the sandbox server and completely isolate it from the production path. We use the secure branch here, permanent branch also. We map it. It maps to the secure server master branch, and this is a secondary Git repository. So this is completely separate than our main authoritative Git repository. This is a secondary Git repository because we are paranoid in here. We're always worried that a machine is going to die and we're going to lose all the historical Git server and the information about that. And as if we're not paranoid enough, we have yet I made a mistake, I'm sorry about that. We have yet a tertiary backup branch. This is also a permanent branch. We have a tertiary backup server. This is the local copy of that backup server, and it maps to a Linux box that we have locally in our facility. So this is the first Git repository, the tertiary Git repository, the third backup of our Git repository that is in our office. So for some reason, if we lose the cloud, if we can't get to the primary Git server, the authoritative Git server, or the secondary Git server on secure, then we have this backup server here that we can commit to while waiting for the clouds to recover or for our internet connectivity to come back. And then finally we have the local branch, the screencast branch. I'm working on that right now, and it maps to a remote branch. And I always like to create a remote branch of my current branch because I like to it gives me a chance to work on the same branch on a different machine or from home if I choose to. That number at the end is a task ID. It maps to the pivotal tracker task ID. So whenever we merge this temporary task branch to the master branch and commit it to the remote server, it automatically updates the pivotal tracker website, and so we know that we're done with this site, with this task. And this is a screenshot of our continuous integration server. So in a nutshell, for this screencast, we've seen the software development process at Nexttesting. We've previously seen servers and environment, and in a future screencast you can see the software and unit integration testing and software deployment to server.